like to share with you today a well-known secret, a secret especially and specifically about men. But before we start, I want to do a small survey with all the men here present. I would like all the men to raise their right hand. I'm going to mention some statements. Please maintain your hand up as the statements apply to you. And if one does not apply, you can no longer participate in the survey. Pretty simple. Statement number 1, you are a man. Very well. Statement number 2, you consider yourself to be educated. You have a history in sports. You are married. In that case, my hand will go down. You are light-skinned or consider yourself to be white-skinned. And last but not least, you have zero debt whatsoever. This survey we just participated in is called a man test. A man test that proves that if you succeed all the way to the end, you are man enough. If you do not succeed, well, you're not man enough. But don't take these words for mine. Sociologist Erving Goffman says that in the American culture, there's only one true and unblushing American male. And he describes it as young, married, white, urban, northern, heterosexual, Protestant father of college education, fully employed, of good complexion, weight, height, and a recent record in sports. Goffman continues saying, any male who fails to qualify in any one of these ways is likely to view himself as unworthy, incomplete, and inferior. So if you did not complete the man test, I think you have the right to feel unworthy, incomplete, and inferior. If these words make you feel uncomfortable, that's actually a good thing. And it's a phenomenon called the social expectations of manhood. It's all around us, and we see it everywhere in the TV, media, radio, and it's this expectation, this projection of hyper-masculinity where men have to be rough and tough, and we have to be in control and power and almighty men. And if we don't, then we're not man enough. I was browsing the web and I saw these images, pretty funny, trending, and they have to do with this topic. This first image I found. Sawdust? Don't you mean man glitter? Of course, implying that labor work is only for men. The second image. If you have a beard but can't change a tire, shave. Implying that only real men wear beards and only real men change tires. This last one I thought was pretty funny. If you don't have a beard, happy Mother's Day to you, because we're men. We're not mothers. Mothers are caring and nurturing, and they're compassionate. And that's not what men do. While we're still trying to figure out what's going on, there's still one question that remains, and is, where did this all start? Where did the concept of manhood start to take place in our U.S. culture? While I was reading about this concept and this phenomenon, I came across this really interesting historical concept, and it's the concept of the marketplace man. This starts to take place late in the 1800s in our U.S. culture due to the market revolution. The marketplace man was a man known to be absent in his home because he was so devoted to his workplace, which was the marketplace. And the marketplace was an all-male environment. Therefore, traits like wealth, power, being in control, consistency, leadership started to be assimilated with this concept of the marketplace man. So within time, manhood started to be defined as a process where a male human being had to eradicate all his female traits. And until he does so, that's when he becomes a real man. So imagine a process of a man eradicating being nurturing, caring, loving, sharing and expressing his feelings. And then, and only then, he becomes a real man. So we see how we've dragged this macro thinking until we have the results we have today in our society. Manhood today, what are the results? Well, it is proven that men show a higher rate in anxiety when it comes to gender roles. This is due to the fear of men losing their manhood or never reaching their manhood. Also, studies show that men manifest higher risk behaviors, meaning that a lot of men do not seek help when needed. Of course, because seeking help is for the weak, and we have to man up because that's what we do. Also, risk behaviors implying that a lot of men act more aggressively and violently to compensate for their manhood. And this last one, the oppression in gender roles, the expectations of manhood are a great contributor to the high rates of depression and suicide when it comes to men. While I was reading this reminded me so much of myself. I'm the youngest of 6 siblings. I have 5 older sisters and then myself. Yes, I know. My childhood was influenced a lot by my sisters. I did a lot of things they did. It was 5-1. I had no chance. There was no other option. So I watched a lot of so-called chick flicks, played dolls, played house. One day I was with my sisters and they were playing giving birth and they finished. And then they looked at me and said, "We're giving birth, you're giving birth." And so I did. While I was growing up, I started to notice that a lot of my friends had trouble categorizing my behavior or who I was. I started to receive a lot of comments like, "Yeah, but when it comes to the guys, you're the exception." Or, "Saul, you're just not the average guy," and comments similar like these. I didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. I just knew it didn't bother me. But one day, a person came up to me and said, "Saul, you're just manless. You're not graduated. You're not fully employed. You can't provide. You're just manless." And that one really hurt. I started to think to myself that what was the whole point of succeeding in any other area of life? I've already failed at the basics, which was being a man. I started to feel like a failure. I started to feel useless, worthless, because someone one day called me manless. Am I man enough? Am I a real man or lesser than a man? Or who gets to define who's a real man or lesser than a man? Or what gets to define are we real men or not? I am here to share with you today that there is no reason to continue reproducing this macro thinking where men have to conform to this false expectation, and if we don't, we fail. No. All the men who are here today, if you've ever asked yourself, are you man enough? I encourage you to start believing and to start educating that we are enough. Echoing the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, he says, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. I would like to end this talk the same way we started, with a small survey. I would like all the men to raise their hands, please. Leave it raised as it applies to you. All the men who are here present, you are yourself. And frankly, that's all you need. Thank you.